Welcome to Meristem Seeds Cup of Joe. On this episode, hear a soft red winter wheat update from Dylan on how wheat production is going this year, as well as some yield results. Our area sales managers met in Illinois for the June sales meeting. We share our experience touring the Brandt Research Farm in Pleasant Plains, Illinois. How can advancing planting dates affect crops and yield potential? And it's that time to spray. Ask us about our Meristem Crop Performance products for corn and soybeans.
Hi, this is Joe Mershman. Welcome to Meristem Seeds Cup of Joe. Today we have Ben, Dylan, and Lynn. And Dylan, I guess you're going to tell us about wheat this morning.
Yeah, I'll give you a little wheat update. Kind of seems like everyone is at least trying to poke into wheat, but it seems like the humidity has been kind of slowing some things down. I think it's kind of driving some guys nuts, but we can't control the weather.
Some guys?
Yeah.
Not you?
No, I'm
the culprit.
No, I'm good. Right. Yep, we've got a terrace project, so I don't need the double crop. But our Peyton is the main one that's coming off, at least for seed production. And guys have been extremely happy right now. We've got about a little over half of our Peyton done for seed production, and right now it's averaging 92. So it's coming off around 13%. It seems like would be the average across all the growers that have brought stuff in, and this has been kind of down in the kind of some sandier ground, so I think that's why maybe it kind of was able to drop and go, and then we're finally starting for Millie 8 to come off. It's definitely a lot slower. I think we're slowly getting to that time where we knew it was a couple days later than about a day and a half, 2 days later than the Peyton to come off, and right now it's doing pretty well. According to our grower, it's not completely finished up, so we don't know the exact details on that, but the test weight has been outstanding on what we've seen and come across the scales on the Millie. We haven't had anything under 60 right now, and the last load that came in was 61.2. So the test weight has been very good on that variety. But then again, we got rain last night, so it's going to slow some guys down. But hopefully, maybe this weekend we'll be able to get going again and continue on.
So Peyton's a hyper early, and Millie is an ultra early. So just to
well, technically, before you coined the term hyper early, the Millie 8 was the earliest thing we had ever seen. So the Millie 8 was actually the introduction to the hyper early. We had it listed as an ultra early last year in the book, but this year we slid it into the hyper early category because it's still a day or two, maybe even 3 days earlier than our Binty 12 that we had in the past. Sure. So it still classifies that direction, but Peyton is awfully early.
Yep.
So
it's the earliest line we've ever seen. Is that correct?
That would be an accurate statement.
What some of our competition says when they have, ultra earlies, well, we're only 2 or 3 days difference between what those guys have. Exhibit A right there, what the difference between 2 or 3 days is getting into the field and getting it done, getting your double crop on. We're going to see that probably expound even more because we're going to see some 4th of July activity going on, and we all know 4th of July comes that late thunderstorm. So we're the guys that before filming you were talking about not getting double crop in. I mean, the difference of a day is getting that in, and some of it you can manage with bins and whatnot. But
yeah, I think the bin thing is one thing that if you're really getting serious about raising wheat is to take that wheat off. How wet can you take it in a bin and air dry it?
If you have the bin capacity in the air, you can probably get away with, and no dryer, you could probably get away with 18% at the most.
So then you get it off and gain so many more days for that second crop, and you protect the test weight by getting it into the bin rather than, because multiple rains on wheat just keeps lowering the test weight. And the reason why is because the kernel swells up when it takes on that moisture and it never shrinks back down to the same size. And so consequently, the rain on wheat that's ripe is not a good thing.
Right. And that's one of the things that I like so much about the Millie and the Peyton too. I think we had a little bit more chaff and stuff in some of the Peyton samples because it's supposed to have pretty decent test weight too. But when you start off with a 62, I think our highest has been 62 for test weight coming in here from seed production. But when you start off at 62, you can handle a couple rain events before you start getting docked. I mean, within reason.
Sure.
So when you start off at a heavier test weight, it definitely helps your dockage score. Some of the other reports that I've gotten this week, I had a grower in central Missouri that sent me a picture of 138 bushel per acre on his yield monitor, smaller field, averaged in the 120s on I'm pretty sure it was a Millie 8 variety that he had from us last year. I had a couple growers further north that had pulled some off that was in the mid to upper 100s. I had a grower that had some Katy, which would have been a hyper early that we were experimenting with, seeing which one of these hyper earlies fit our books the best before we made seed production plans for last year. And I had a grower that wouldn't give me a bushel per acre count, but he said, hey, this would be in Illinois. He said, hey, this Katy's not coming off as soon as you told me it was going to come off. And the dealer had to explain that, hey, we were really short on growing degree units in May. That's probably why it slowed it down a little bit. And then that grower called back very shortly after and said, I'm not going to complain. The wheat's yielding so good that I'll give the couple extra days the time that it needs because it's yielding tremendously well. So,
and we've talked about it in previous episodes, but the nice part about wheat when we get in that situation is you're almost rewarded for the cooler fill period and being able to extend that fill period out. So it's one of those, you're not maybe getting the timeliness that you want, but Mother Nature is going to reward you for a little more yield.
And again, a bin with lots of air, you can offset that then. In those years that things are pushed a little bit behind, you can catch that back up. And I think that's the secret to really making this double crop thing work, no matter where you're at. I don't care if you're in the Mid-South or if you're in the North. I mean, anytime you can get your crop in as early in June as you possibly can, you're gonna benefit because you're probably still at 80% yield potential on your soybeans.
Yeah, and one of the other things that I wanted to touch on too with the ultra early, hyper early conversation is we already have guys calling and asking for next year's crop, and they really, if they've come from different breeding programs and they're not familiar with the ultra and the hyper earlies, they're like, well, how much yield do I lose? I'm not having any of our guys that are planting our ultra and hyper early lines, nobody's complaining. I mean, the yields are absolutely tremendous. And the yield data that we get, and it's a flawed system because the yield data that we get is comparing these lines that have been sitting out in the field to medium earlies in the same testing environment. Whether we have the universities do our testing or we do have private guys do our testing, you show this 5, 6, 7% yield loss. But I mean, we're still cranking 120, 130. I was sitting in a combine last night. The highest the yield monitor got was 145 bushel an acre. The yield potential is there with these varieties. I don't know that we have that true 5 or 6% yield loss. I mean, that's what we have to advertise because that's what the data suggests. But if you take care and manage your wheat the same way you would with a medium early, these lines are capable of producing those super high yields that growers are often very, very excited to pass back on to us. So
yeah, you're right, Ben. One of the last times we put our ultra earlies in the university yield trials, we didn't even get any data. They said because the birds ate it all, because it was the only ripe block in the test, so the birds came in and ate it. And the same thing, every time it rains you lose test weight, every time you lose test weight you lose yield. So all the data is not fair. It's not fair to the hyper earlies and the ultra earlies because it's sitting around waiting for the rest of the plots to get ripe before they can harvest it, and we've lost a ton of yield. So
right.
So I would agree with you, Ben, 100%. If you manage it correctly, the yield is going to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. There was we're not faulting anyone for this. They wanted to use our product in a published trial last year, and we got looking. We know what our yield potential is. It was in comparison to a competitor, and it was like, something just doesn't seem right. Digging into the data, they combined it on July 25th, and that wheat was probably, heck, we probably could have given it a chance to shake it out and grown a cover crop on the backside of that. It would have been 6 inches tall by that point in time. But that is something reflective, and I know we've talked about it before with plots in particular. Always vet your data sources and make sure that you kind of understand the background information that goes into it, because these hyper earlies are in that boat that if they're in comparison to medium early or even full season, potentially if they're not managing that correctly, that's not an accurate portrayal of the data. We had that experience back when we were dealing with short corn as well. It's the same thing. There's certain environmental factors that can dictate yield when you put unlike products next to each other.
Very true.
Correct. What do you got, Lynn?
So the sales force, we took a educational trip. Just got back actually yesterday from that. Had our June sales meeting in Springfield, Illinois, and was able to go over to the Brandt facilities to tour their plots. For those that aren't familiar, Brandt Consolidated has a fantastic research farm located outside of Pleasant Plains, Illinois, 300 acres. I'd hate to see how many replicated plots that they have out there. Mind-blowing. Everything from depletion plots to high-yielding environments. Just anything that you can imagine, they're probably testing it. So some of the things that are, we had gone there the year before. This year, I think I actually picked up more information than the year before that. But one of the biggest things that I just wanted to highlight is on soybeans, it's really amazing how much yield potential that we still have yet to be determined on the table. At R5, we can still influence yield related to where we're at. The biggest thing with soybeans, we do things early to influence yield, like planting early, increasing our node count. But we could still, from a fertility standpoint, help maximize the yield potential in soybeans. Corn, we've known it. It makes sense. Emergence is a time where we need to make the determination on how much money we're going to put in. Had that conversation with someone on the way home. Hey, we're really late planted. Conditions weren't ideal. How much money do I spend on this crop? And we're not recommending that you give up on it, but if you're someone here, locally that was able to get in April 15th, had really even emergence, this crop has a lot of potential. And if you didn't take care of it early, you definitely did not protect any yield. So,
and Lynn, to your point, Henry and I were just talking. My brother, who runs the fertilizer side of this business, he's saying this thing's really changed the last 2 years in that there's a lot more nitrogen put on after the corn crop is up with sulfur now. And again, farmers are recognizing exactly what you're talking about, the extra yield that they can add in by splitting that nitrogen, adding additional sulfur, not to mention all the other things that you were exposed to yesterday.
Yeah. The other one that I thought was really interesting, and Henry would probably like to hear this, is that as we advance our planting dates, and what they have seen is really two-planter situation is ideal for most people, because that curve on the early planting helps corn just as much as it helps soybeans. Now the caveat would be when we're in cooler, maybe a little bit more wet conditions, phosphorus near that seed is extremely important, because our soil, even if you're in a high fertility environment, our soil, we're just not mineralizing enough P to get that plant going. And what we run into issues on that is that P can antagonize zinc, and when we don't have zinc, we run into a lot of problems with our plant. Over there, what they run into is where we're talking about kind of our sulfur curve. We haven't got here locally, keep putting on more sulfur and keep seeing a yield response. Where they're at, they're putting on zinc in multiple passes, and I really don't think that they have found where that optimal zinc level is at. They just keep getting a yield response and yield response. And we're talking a place that across the scales it was what, 299, and they have depletion plots. So I'm guessing they had corn 340, 350 plus probably to hold that average. So very interesting to be able to look at early season phosphorus and early season zinc in a plant available form that's able to kind of establish that crop.
And Brandts have kind of figured out the right, well, I would say zinc. In other words, there's all different levels of zinc, different way it's made, the way it gets into the plant, et cetera. And their experience, many years of, because zinc's so important, they recognize it. Decades ago, they've kind of perfected the process for
absolutely.
zinc.
So let's talk about the zinc first, because one of the cool things that we saw from there, and we saw this last year as well when we were touring the facility, is that they sell 10% chelated zinc, or 8%, whatever that number is. And Brandt formulates it, and they still sell it to this day. Brandt recently, within the past 5 years, has bought Talc USA, which is outside of Springfield as well. They are seeing extremely similar yield responses to the zinc that is in the bottom of the pail, and that this zinc, this ground fine zinc that's in the bottom of the base of the pail, or the hopper throttle pails, also is available in one of their pails as well. But they're seeing similar response.
The planter box treatment you're talking about.
The planter box treatment. They're seeing similar response to having an in-furrow zinc product, which is probably more expensive than the zinc that's in the pail. They're seeing similar responses to having that zinc there to help precipitate the phosphorus and drive phosphorus into the plant early on. One of the other things that they were talking about when Lynn was talking about early season determining yield in corn is you really want to flood that zone when that corn plant is first germinating, because when the radicle comes out and that radicle on the corn plant senses that it has more nutrients available than what it's going to need, even at that early stage, it is tremendously important for setting up huge yield potential. And I'm talking the yield potential that Randy Dowdy and David Hula and all those guys talk about, because you really want that zinc and that phosphorus right there, and we have ways of implementing that through our planter box treatments that we have. So really important. Now we can go on to the boron piece of it.
The one more to your point, just to add on that, that is why when we're looking at the curve, when a corn plant is in its we'll call it infancy, the actual amount of phosphorus that it needs in relation to the linear inch of root is higher than when it's actually at its maximum consumption. So what that means is we have to have a plant available form of P in a higher level when that plant is smaller, just because that relationship to the root to P is very important, and to basically put that in.
Yeah, because you're talking miles of roots versus inches of roots.
With the average adult corn plant has 3,000 miles of roots, according to the experts.
That very well could be. But yeah, so it's all about having that stuff available when the plant is very young. And I can throw a chart up.
Yep.
While you were talking about that.
Yeah, and we go to the boron is a prime example of why, to Joe's comment about why Brandt formulation is extremely important, because corn is really not designed to intake foliar applied products. It really wants to take everything it wants up through the roots. So when we apply these foliar products, it's extremely important that it be in the right form and have the right mechanism to not be tied up in the leaf. Because what happens, and I know we talked about it last time, if you're at 10% boron, you throw it out there, take a tissue test, it looks fine. It is the boron levels, it's in the leaf, but what happens is we can't get that translocation through the plant. It basically just stops in that leaf. And boron, Ben, if you want to kind of give us a little bit of the insight into boron, but boron, I mean, same boat as zinc. Like, we just almost can't get enough on it, and it's so important to the plant to inhibit the leaky cell syndrome and that kind of operation within the plant.
Yep, boron is extremely important when it comes to cell wall formation. So, and specifically in the vascular tract of the corn plant and soybean plant for that matter, boron's actually more important in soybeans than it is in corn. But corn being a grass plant, you kind of think of the up-down movement of nutrients and water. But when you have the right amount of boron and the right formulation of boron in that plant, instead of the plant robbing the boron from the cell walls, allowing for the sugars to move side to side rather than up and down through the vascular plant, when you don't rob that because you apply a product like NKBS, which has the Crosslink Smart Boron technology, or the Harvest Shield Complete, which has the Crosslink Smart technology, it allows for the cell walls to maintain the boron that they need, and also allow for that boron to help transport potassium, sugars, amino acids, all that other stuff to the ear or to the pods on the soybean plant. So it's always extremely impressive. Yeah, so we have to give a shout out. And Lynn, there's two excellent PhD and master students that were at that. They're both undergraduates of understudies of Dr. Fred Bilo, who is one of the smartest crop corn physiologists in the nation, I would probably argue. And these guys are a chip off the old block because they are the ones they work for Brandt, they give the tours, and they are absolutely geniuses when it comes to explaining this stuff to agronomists and customers and things of that nature. And what were those two guys' names?
Yeah, Dr. Winans and Dr. Lehman were the two individuals. And yeah, they the base of knowledge that they have, that they provide, that they just build on with their research as well, and being able to, that's the very interesting part. Right now, make America healthy again is the big kick with Mr. Kennedy. That a lot of the stuff when we talk about human health and plant health, it's very similar. They're both living organisms, so they're putting it in a way that makes a lot of sense. Sulfur with the amino acids being a building block of protein. There's just a lot of I bet right now, looking at my notepad, there's probably 7 pages of notes that I took over that. Still can't. Read over it last night, read over before we did this. There's still just stuff I'm like, yeah, I remember writing that down, but now it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Just the amount of information. We'll probably hit on this for another 3 episodes for sure. But if you're definitely interested, I know they love to show that off. And if we have any customers that are interested, you really don't have to twist my arm to make me go back there and have another listen.
Yeah, and they just built a brand new meeting facility right in the middle of that 300 and some acres. So it's state of the art. A very pleasant environment to learn in.
Yeah, the Evelyn Brandt Thomas Innovation Center, as I believe what it was called, and they said that they were going to celebrate her 102nd birthday.
Yep.
So they had the 100th was the groundbreaking, the 101st was able to. It wasn't completely done, but they're able to host it, and then the 102nd they're going to be a finished product. So definitely congratulations for 102. And they said that she still comes in, she still looks over, make sure all the finances are fine, and they called her the Hawk because she made sure everything was working well. But I really appreciate the effort that went in to providing us the resources to gain some knowledge, and it is really it's going to be at least 2 more episodes. We're going to crank off some more stuff because we haven't even got into the macronutrients yet. Those were just 2 of the what I would call the low-hanging fruit that we have the opportunity to influence the yield with right now. There is still more to be had too, so stay tuned for more episodes as well.
Yep, and to tie into that, so Brandt obviously formulates the Meristem products that we use, and we have NKBS, we have Harvest Shield Complete, sitting on the floor here ready to ship if guys are interested for their fungicide pass. I did not take pictures yesterday, and I'm kicking myself for not doing it. Tassels are out on the first planted corn. I saw tassels out on the way back from some of the, it had to be April 10th or earlier planted stuff, but it's time for fungicide time if you're a one tripper. So if you're interested, our recommendation for the NKBS product is a quart per acre, and then the Revline late season, which helps also reduce stress, helps kernel development and things of that nature. That use rate is
12.8 ounces.
12.8 ounces per acre. So we have products sitting on the floor if anybody is interested. I'm going to be experimenting around a little bit. That Harvest Shield Complete that you would usually be using in your first post pass has some phenolic acids and prolines that are stress mitigators. I think that we're going to see, basically when you apply those products, it buys you 30 to 60 days of stress reduction because it calms that plant down. I'm going to be experimenting because I think and I wish I was a meteorologist or at least a better one than what I am, but I think we're going to see a cool down coming in the beginning of next week, but I think we're going to go right back into the 90-degree weather for this long-term next 2 weeks. We're going to be seeing some heat. So I'm going to be putting a pint of Harvest Shield Complete and a pint of NKBS together to help reduce stress and that Revline late season on our crops to help.
Corn and soybeans? Or
yes.
Just corn and soybeans?
Corn and soybeans, because right now there's so many good things that are in these foliars that consistently show positive return on investment that we're going to be going that direction as soon as time allows. So.
Last point I just wanted to make before, because I'm a little bit nervous with our timing, is I thought it was very interesting. He said, we're going to be in a point with our early planted soybeans that we're kind of going to bounce between R3, R4. As you look, as that plant
R2,
grows,
R3.
Sorry, R2, R3. As that plant continues to grow, his recommendation, where they've seen the most efficacy out of the fungicide application, the first time that you see R3, get that sprayer out there and go make that application. Don't wait for it to kind of even back out.
I've had guys have questions on that before, and it's a really interesting conversation because the earlier planting that you do actually allows for that plant to be in R2, R3 transition back and forth for a longer period of time. So where you have a late May planted bean crop, you may only experience R2, R3, and then it goes right into R4, R5. But when you plant early, you may have 4 or 5 weeks of this transitionary period because you're putting on 3 or 4 more nodes and then a later planted situation. So I point blank asked him, I said, so during that 4-week window, when do you like to spray? And he said, I would rather be early than late when you're working on your NKBS, because you're protecting the center of that plant, and the majority of the yield comes from the center of the bean plant. So you want to protect those flowers. On 140,000 stand, 1 extra pod per plant gains you 2 bushel per acre. So all we have to do is protect 1 more flower. And what you're doing when you reduce stress and foliar feed these crops is you're helping flower and pod retention and reducing stress in the plant. So the time is getting close, or the time is now, to start thinking about what you want to do here, and we should have the ability to react pretty quick.
Yeah, and the nice part with beans is they set themselves up knowing that their compensation mechanism is to abort those flowers or pods. So might as well protect it.
Yep.
That's the beauty of soybeans, is that from here, we talk about the genetic potential that we have. This pass is a great opportunity to protect that genetic potential.
Yep, completely agree.
Okay, well, if I don't have anything else, we'll get to the part that everybody's been waiting for.
We do, but Alex needs to probably edit this.
Yeah. Anyhow, as you know, if those of you that are new to our podcast, is that I believe that the corny joke was invented by seed companies, and it was invented back in the 30s when they put out their first seed guides, and they didn't have the luxury of color, print, and pictures, so getting a potential customer to turn the page was difficult. So seed company decided, I'm going to put a joke on each page to get the person to look at their products, hopefully. So we do the same thing. Hopefully you watch the whole podcast to get to the jokes here at the end. So it's been a hot week, and so consequently I thought, well, we should do some so hot as jokes, so okay. I don't know if you know this or not, but it was so hot this past week, I saw a funeral procession pull through Dairy Queen, okay? It was so hot last week, I saw a bird pull a worm out of the ground with an oven mitt. That's pretty hot. In Washington, D.C., it was so hot, they installed a fan in the depth ceiling. They installed a fan in the depth ceiling. So yesterday I went outside, and I said, it's so hot that even my shadow said, nope, not today. Okay? And the last one, it's so hot that I have my air conditioner cranked up all the way to bankruptcy. So anyhow, thanks for watching today. We hope your family is safe and healthy, and we sincerely appreciate your business. We'll see you next week.